All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate everybody showing up. So our guest today, we have Simma Lieberman. I'm going to read, this is from her website, but Simma Lieberman is internationally known as The Inclusionist because she creates inclusive cultures where people love to do their best work and customers love to do business. She is a diversity, inclusion, culture change consultant, speaker, and coach. Now, Simma's actually spoken to a lot of large VSP clients that are very important, obviously, like Diageo, Motorola, Kaiser Permanente, Chevron, and City of San Francisco, a bunch of other ones too. She's also had articles published by really great publications like CNN.com, Forbes.com, Fox.com, and a plethora of others. She currently co-hosts Swirl Radio, which is an LGBT radio station, and she's also co-written 2 books. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lieberman here. Thank you very much for coming.
The email said, I never supported same-sex marriage. I thought domestic partnerships were enough until I read what you went through. The writer was my friend Steve, who had read an article that I wrote for CNN about my experience, and the article was entitled, How My Views on Same-Sex Marriage Have Changed. Like a lot of other LGBT people, lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, and I'll be saying LGBT now, so I don't have to say all the letters. We thought also domestic partnerships, that was enough. Until we found out that it wasn't enough. And that was on January 26, 2003, when my partner Sandra Brown died suddenly. Now, we had been together for 18 years. When she died, our son was 8. We heard people talk a lot about same-sex marriage, but it was one of those things where we were glad people were no longer getting arrested for being out or being gay or lesbian or any of that. And we felt that we had more important things to do, like who was going to help our son with his homework because she was patient, I was not patient. I would do homework sitting there with my cell phone, or what preschool he was going to go to, or the fact that, let's see, we'll spend Hanukkah at our house because Sim is Jewish, Sandra's African American, so we'll spend Christmas and Kwanzaa at her family's house, and we'll tell people not to give our son too many presents, but he can have some. So that was our main concern. I mean, we heard people talk about marriage. We really didn't know. We didn't know about the impact that marriage could have on us. We didn't know about those benefits. We thought it was just like a nice ritual, and maybe people were just copying, like people who were not LGBT. We thought, oh, why would we just copy thing? We don't really need to do that. And then we thought domestic partnerships. We said, oh, it's so many pages, so much paperwork for what? Just health insurance? Because we thought that's what it was. We thought it was just about health insurance and visiting each other in the hospital. We lived in Berkeley. I'd been in the hospital. She was allowed to visit me. We didn't think it was an issue. Now all of that really changed the day that she died. She died suddenly, unexpectedly. She died at a friend's house. Avi and I, our son's name is Avi. We found out when we got home one afternoon, there was a note on our door from the coroner telling us to call. I called, and they told us that she had died suddenly. And I said, well, I was her partner, so I want to come and get her things and get her car. And what they told me, they said, well, you may have been her partner, but legally you have no legal rights here. That you can't get any of her things. That's up to her blood relatives. And her blood relatives was her brother, who was also grieving. So it would have been a lot easier if we could have picked things up, but we couldn't, because our relationship, our 18 years together, had no validity. Had no validity whatsoever. I had no say-so in what we were going to do with her, how much, if I could spend time with her. And our son, if we had been married, I mean, if it had been marriage, we would have gotten married. we would have invited our friends and had a party, a reason to have a party. But when she died, all of a sudden, when I realized, oh, I'm just a friend, it hit me, and we felt it was like we were invisible. Because had marriage been legal, our son would have been able to get her Social Security. I mean, she had a lot more Social Security than I did. I had my own business for a long time. You know, I tried to pay as little taxes as possible. But in her situation, she had a lot of Social Security. I would have gotten widow's death benefits, and I would have had a right to her last paycheck. So I can't tell you how devastating it was to realize that your 18 years in the eyes of the law meant nothing. So then, fast forward, June 2013. DOMA has its demise, DOMA goes down, Prop 8 is done, and same-sex marriage is now legal in California. And same-sex marriage is legal in it's legal now in 15 states. And hopefully it's going to continue on. And although it's legal in 15 states, does that mean that we're done? No, we're not done. There's a lot of work to do, because just because laws pass, and remember we only have 15 states, just because laws pass doesn't mean that attitudes change, just mean that behavior changes. So what I want to talk about for the rest of the time that we have together, though, is how those changes and how those advances have impacted the workplace, how they impacted lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual people in relationships, not in relationships, how it's impacted all organizations, and also what managers and leaders need to do, and also what employee resource, especially LGBT resource groups, what we need to do to be able to play a role in creating inclusion for everybody. Now, the first thing, when we talk about LGBT or same-sex couples, what does it mean to be a same-sex couple and get married? So you have all the rights that any other married couple has. But today, I'm not going to talk about the legal rights. I'm not going to talk about any political ramifications, because you could go on Google. That is not my expertise. But I can tell you from my experience and from my research, from my observation, and also from my radio show that I do about all the calls that we've been getting, how people tell us that it's impacted them and how they think it's going to impact them. So in terms of same-sex marriage, I've got some notes here. I want to just read some of the things that I have. Is that in general, same-sex couples will now be more visible. When people are more visible and they're more comfortable who they are, it means that they'll be able to be more focused on their work. They won't have to hide the pictures. You know, it's really hard when you have to hide the pictures. I used to hide the gay books. People would come to my house and I would hide the gay books. And I was doing diversity work. But when I first started doing diversity work 20 years ago, even people in the diversity field, there was a lot of homophobia, and people felt that LGBT people had no place at the table. So here I was having to hide who I am. And it takes a lot of energy. I don't know if any of you have ever had to hide who you are. It takes a lot of energy. And it's energy that you could use to be able to be more productive and to be more focused. Now, maybe in VSP you don't have to hide who you are, but you know, and maybe VSP in other parts of the world, people do have to hide who they are. LGBT people do have to hide who they are. I'm going to read you, Deloitte just did a study about what they call covering. It's called Uncovering Talent, a New Model for Inclusion. It examines how employees conform in the workplace. And their study was about the impact of people having to hide who they are, or hide a piece of it. They said that 3 out of 4, 75% of their research participants state that they've covered their identity, and surprisingly, half are straight white male respondents report hiding their authentic selves at work. At the same time, 94% of black people, men and women, said they had to hide parts of who they are. 91% of women of color, 80% of women in general, and over 75%, or actually no, 91% of LGBT people said they had to hide who they are. And so the majority of respondents stated that their leaders, 51%, and the organization's culture expected individuals to cover. A substantial number of those respondents said that this expectation decreased their sense of opportunity and commitment to the organization. So, even though we know VSP is a great organization, right? But I'd like you to just understand, I'd like to put you in the mindset of what it's like to have to hide parts of who you are. And so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to have you pair up with somebody sitting next to you or anywhere in the room, and I want you to talk about either your weekend, or if you didn't do anything over the weekend, talk about your family of origin. But what you can't do is you cannot use any pronouns. So you have to talk about people in your life, or what you did over the weekend, without saying she, he, father, mother, sister, brother. I'm going to give you each about 1.5 minutes to talk to the other person, and then as the other person, you get to ask questions, you get to probe, because oftentimes like people try to be hiding who they are, and there's somebody always probing, get in their business. So you could ask so if you're the person who talks, you could ask questions, well, what did you do then? And you have to do your best not to use any pronouns, okay? So let's do that now. Everybody get a partner.
Really.
And each of you is going to get a chance, so that for person A, first person will get about, I think I'll give you 2 minutes to do it. And then we'll switch, and then the other person will get 2 minutes. And then we'll talk about it, okay? Oh, man! A director in your company said, what's a pronoun? Now, a participle, I have no idea what that is. But a pronoun is like a gender pronoun, like he, she, father, mother, brother. Anything. You want to hide the gender. You cannot use any words related to gender. Okay. You can say
Okay, so really not. It seems like
How are we doing so far?
good. That's very interesting. So tell me about your It's really weird when you already know all these answers. It's like, how about like this? Oh, that's a cheap That's true, yeah. If you were to exercise, you wouldn't normally ask you how many kids.
Most people would normally ask that.
Yeah. watching this now?
Huh?
Are people watching this now?
No.
All right, time to switch. If you have not switched, time to switch. That was fun. So what was that? I'd like people to know, what was that like? Hard. It was tough. Awkward. Say some more about that.
It was awkward because you're not used to referring to someone as a partner. You're used to saying wife or husband or brother or sister. And to have to disguise the identity was awkward.
Anybody else?
I thought it was painful. I was listening to Vernon, he has a little boy, and I happen to know that, because he had to talk about the child. And part of me, even though I don't have children myself, but part of me felt like you can't have a sense of pride. I mean, it takes away it disconnects. You don't have that sense of pride, that sense of your face lighting up when you talk about your 2-year-old or something, and it's kind of, that was demoralizing, I thought.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think it's the same thing even with having a partner. The same sort of sense of pride. You can't have that if you're not being honest about it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really difficult. Now, when you're the person listening and somebody's, it seems like they're taking the extra energy not to be absolutely honest, what do you start thinking?
Evasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't trust me.
You don't trust me. And I don't trust you. And then how does it impact the way that you two work together?
Distance.
Yeah, lack of trust. I'm not asking you for help. I don't trust you, and I'm not asking. If I'm an L or a B, or I'm not going to ask you for help, because what if you want to come to my house? What if you want to call me? I don't know who's going to answer the phone, and you might ask questions. So all of that. So that's how it's going to. It has a positive. So people being out, same-sex marriage being legal, people being more accepting, has a great impact on people's productivity, and also impacts people who are non-LGBT, because it impacts the way people will be able to work together. People will be able to have more trust, and people will be able to work closer together. So, how does it impact people? Oh, one other thing too, and in terms of relationships, that with same-sex marriage being legal, or more people being okay with LGBT people, it means that there's less negative messages coming in that help destroy your relationship. Because when you always have negative messages and you don't have any great role models, it's easy to find fault with the other person. You start fighting and bickering. And if people have a happier home life, chances are they're going to have a happier work life. And if people have a happier work life, they're going to have a happier home life. So then how does this impact people who are not in relationships, but who may be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender? For young people, it gives people a lot of hope. The visibility and the optimism. It gives people hope, because when people are bullying you, if you feel that you are the only person and there's no one who seems to represent you and there's no one where you can go and talk to somebody, you take it all in. And we've had way too many suicides. So what I'm hoping and what I hear is that it's helping young people will be able to accept themselves more, And in the work environment, everybody, all LGBT people and allies are less likely to be willing to put up with homophobic remarks. Because what happens is that when you are feeling like you have to hide something, you'll put up with any kind of remark because you don't want people to know. Or even if you deal like with racism, if you have somebody who's African American or a person of color and maybe they're the only person in the organization or in that group, and they hear people making racist jokes, offensive jokes, oftentimes they may not say anything because they're afraid that if they say something, there's going to be repercussions. And that's why allies are so important. And so as more people get to know LGBT people on a personal level, we're going to see people, allies, stepping up to the plate. And allies are going to have to step up to the plate because with people being more out, there's going to be more of a backlash in some areas. And what I mean by that is that homophobic people will feel more threatened. You see that, you notice that happen? You notice you start reading more about more violence against LGBT people these days? Because people are feeling threatened, like, oh, what else are they taking away from us? Now we have to like these people, we think that there's something wrong with them. So they're going to feel a little threatened. On the other hand, because everything has its on the other hand, if you're a person and you think you don't know any LGBT people, so all you think that you have is you go, well, I don't really know any, but I know how those people are. And then you find out that the person that you liked yesterday is lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Then you have to decide if you still like that person. And if you like that person, then you're going to like the whole person. And there's a good chance, if you're a good, decent person and not a bigoted homophobe, you're going to question your values and you're going to open up. I was working a few years ago. I was working at, actually with Chevron, and I was working at the refineries, doing some diversity training at the refinery, and we were working with the diversity council. And a tall white guy comes up to me, and he says, I'm on the diversity council. Oh, I love this, I have such a passion for it. He said, I'm a Mormon. He said, so you could, and this is before they had Mormons for LGBT rights and Mormons for same-sex marriage. He said, so you could imagine that my issue right now about being a Mormon is around, he said, the homosexual issue. And I just listened to him. He said, and I got a new manager, and she was in my department, and then I found out she was a lesbian. He said, and I had to ask myself, he said, after a few weeks, he said, I had to ask myself, are my religious beliefs, are my biases interfering with her ability to do her best work? And he said he realized that it was interfering with his abilities, her ability. He was interfering with her ability to do her best work. And he said at that moment, he said, I had to put my religious feelings aside and I had to focus on the work. He said, and she became one of my best managers. He said, and I recommended her for a promotion. So things actually, so they can be a lot, so they can be changes when people get to know each other. And I think that it's the same thing with any group. Like people will think, well, you have somebody who maybe they grew up in a racist household. And they don't know any people of color except what they see on television, except the messages that they get. And then they go and they work somewhere and they come in contact with somebody who's a person of color and they become friends with them. Then they have to start questioning their values. And that's really why diversity and inclusion is so important. And our work together is so important. Because it's so important that people get to know each other, that people get to talk to each other, that people are able to work with each other. And what's the role of the manager? So if you're a manager, your role as things start changing and as people are less tolerant of homophobia and also as the laws change, whether you want to or not, you have to be an ally. Because people have to see you as the leader. You have to be the role model. not only do you have to be the role model, you have to be the one who steps up and says things. So, if you have a couple of people that you work with and they're your good friends, and they come in your office often and they're making homophobic remarks, and either you don't say anything or you laugh, you've got to stop that. And that's a risk. How many of you, like, Jason, you're an ally, right? Have you ever thought that maybe there might be a risk to being an ally?
Sure.
Like, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Would you just share a little bit about that?
The risk, I think, could be that if someone makes the comment, then you now have to make that decision, kind of as you alluded to do I laugh and maintain this friendship or this camaraderie here, or do I take this opportunity to educate? And I think the important thing there is to have political savvy and awareness and be able to educate without alienating. But I think that's probably the risk, is the opportunity to alienate people that you are currently or building friendships with, or business relationships, or anything.
Yeah, peer pressure is very difficult. And it's the same thing if all of a sudden you start standing up for yourself, and before you were just going along with people, and all of a sudden you start standing up for yourself, you risk that. But the risk of not saying something, the risk of not taking action is so much greater. And what that means as a manager is that you also have to take the time to get some education, and you have to be willing to educate other people. So it's not a lot. Over those people think, oh, well, I didn't laugh at the joke, so they must know it's okay. I said, no, silence means consent. I have to push you. You have to go further. You have to not only not laugh at the joke, you have to say something. You have to be willing to take that stand. Now, LGBT people who are LGBT or allies, we also have a responsibility. Because one thing, and I'm not saying this is in your organization at all, but in many organizations, groups that have been excluded and then come together oftentimes end up becoming siloed. And I've seen this, again, I don't know if it's happening with you, but it's something to look out for, that in many LGBT ERGs or other ERGs, people get into silos so that you're so happy to be with people that are like you. You're so happy to be helping each other. But then what you're not doing is you're not really advancing the cause. You're not really creating more inclusion in the organization for everybody and for yourself. So here's some of the things that LGBT people need to do. One is you have to personally invite people to your events. And it's wonderful that, Jason, are there other allies in the ERG that you know of?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's great, because you want to also, so allies have a responsibility too, because allies have a lot of power to bring other people in. So you want to be able to invite other people that are not LGBT or maybe who don't even know a whole lot. You want to bring them to meetings. And when people come to meetings who are not, you have to, individually and as a group, make people feel uncomfortable, make people feel comfortable. Because many times, people are going to be uncomfortable. How many of you have ever experienced going into a room or a meeting or a social event where you're the only person who looks like you in one way or another? Is it a little uncomfortable in the beginning? So what would help you become comfortable? What are some of the things that would help you? What would make you feel comfortable? If you went in, and so both of you raised your hand, okay. So if you went into a room, you're the only person, you don't even know anybody, what would make you feel comfortable?
I think some personal approach.
Okay.
Someone to introduce themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Personal contact.
You speak
Louder for them.
Oh.
Someone to
yes.
break the ice.
So, if nobody says anything to you, what happens?
Stay isolated.
Yeah. And you feel, it's a really weird feeling. So, those of us, if somebody comes into an LGBT ERG or any other ERG, and we see that there are people who are uncomfortable or who don't know anybody, we have to take it upon us. We can't always expect everybody to come to us, even though it would be great. Sometimes you go, oh, well, we've suffered for so long, they need to come to us. Yeah, okay. Sometimes is it better to be right, or is it better to actually get some results? And it's actually better to get some results. Because the more people that we win over to our side, the quicker things change. So somebody who's never been around LGBT people, somebody who doesn't know that they've ever been around lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people. And some people think, oh, we have no transgender people in our organization. I said, oh, yes, you do. But maybe they just haven't felt comfortable telling you. So all of a sudden, we have to allow that people are going to be uncomfortable. And we have to make it okay. Because it doesn't mean that they're a bad person if they're uncomfortable. It means that we can help them be comfortable. And yeah, it's everybody's responsibility to know the right language. But a lot of times people don't know the right language, and they don't know what to say. They don't know how to ask. Have you ever felt that way where you're walking on eggshells? You're dealing like with diversity issues, and you're just walking on eggshells. So what you do is so as not to walk on eggshells, because you're afraid of saying the wrong thing. So what do you end up usually saying? Nothing. You end up saying nothing. And in fact, you kind of pretend, you pretend that the person isn't even there. You go, oh, please don't come up and talk to me. Please don't say anything, because I might say the wrong thing, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. So those of us who are in the know, we have to help people understand. So if somebody says like the wrong thing, we need to correct them. And if you want to add please, if you have any questions at any time, or you want to add anything, please feel free. Because you may have some ideas about language that I haven't even thought of. Here's things that I've experienced. People say, I really support this same-sex marriage. I really support this gay marriage thing. But is one the husband? Who's the husband and who's the wife? Because it's just not in their vantage point that somebody would be the husband and somebody would be the husband. Somebody would be the wife and somebody would be the wife. I mean, even as a person who's been a lesbian all these years, when same-sex marriage was first legalized, I thought it was weird at first. We go, what? Wife and wife, huh? Just because of how I've been thinking all these years. None of us are immune. So we just have to be willing to answer. We don't laugh at the person, we have to be willing to answer. Somebody else, after my partner died, I had to think about it. I was sending out a newsletter about what to do if you or one of your employees, if somebody you know or one of your employees loses somebody. How do you deal with the grief? And at first I thought, well, because I still hadn't told a lot of people. I mean, after my partner died, that's kind of when I decided, I don't care. If you can't handle it, tough. Because by that time, I was in an economic situation okay enough that it didn't bother me. I wasn't as scared. And plus, I felt like it was a legacy. But I still took a risk. Should I say something? And so the person who was sending out my newsletter, without telling me, she adds in, well, Simma just lost her partner, and here's some of Simma's experiences that she'd like to share with you. When I first saw that, I thought, what did you do? But then, I got amazing emails from people. And one of my clients, who's also one of your clients, a senior leader from Diageo, I won't mention any names, but he sent me an email. He said, I'm so sorry to hear. He said, but what you've shared with me has really helped me. He said, because my PA, I guess that personal assistant, their executive assistant, who's in the UK, her partner has breast cancer, and I just didn't know whether I should say anything. He said, but now you've really helped me know what to say. So with that like everybody else, we're going to have partners who die, we're going to have husbands who die, wives who die, parents who die, and you don't do anything different than anybody else. You don't say, oh, I'm sorry that like your gay husband died or anything, anything like that. But it's the same way that you would support any other grieving person. But these are things that people may not know. Somebody has a baby. Send them a congratulations note. I mean, this is really sad. I actually have a cousin on the East Coast who is, even to this day, so closeted. She's a teacher. She and her partner, they had a baby, but people didn't know she had a partner. And the partner gave birth to the baby. what my cousin did was she told people she had adopted a baby that she was raising by herself. So it's something that we need to, we congratulate people. We have baby showers for people if they want one. We have wedding showers, whatever it is that you do. I don't know, give everybody cookies, sell them Girl Scout cookies. I mean, it's just like the same thing that you do with everybody else. And other words that you want to correct people. Can we get rid of the word gay lifestyle, please? I hate that word, but I hear it so many times. And I've heard people who are doing diversity will say, well, I support the gay lifestyle. And I said, what's the gay lifestyle? I pay my mortgage. I have a son. I worry when the teacher calls me that my son's in trouble, just like anybody else. I said, so let's get rid of the term lifestyle. My lifestyle is very similar to yours. And then sexual preference. Let's ditch sexual preference because sexual orientation. And we have to be willing to share this information with people. Now, do any of you have any words that you think are important for people to understand or know? Am I leaving anything out?
I think transgender is one that confuses people a lot. And
Yeah.
there's gender identity, gender expression, and what are the differences? Some are medical issues, some are preferences.
Well, the thing
or
about
orientation.
And the thing that people need to know about gender identity and transgender is not a sexual orientation. Because now people want to show that they're like so pro LGBT people. They'll say, yes, we're for anybody's sexual orientation, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. But as we learn more, we find out that somebody could be transgender and they could be LGB, or they could be transgender and they could be heterosexual. So we have to be willing to ask questions, and we have to be willing to answer questions. How many of you have ever found yourself in a situation where you really wanted to know about somebody's difference, but you were afraid to ask them? You're laughing. Tell us a story. Don't be afraid.
This is 22 years ago when I came first to the United States. And
From where?
From India.
Okay.
I got married and my husband decided to take me to San Francisco downtown. That's where we were living. And so this is the first time we were walking together, and he met another friend, and he told me that's the first time he spoke about gay. And I'm like, what is that? I don't know. In India, never heard about it, didn't know anything about it, and kind of that's when my curiosity started. I'm like, what is it? What is it different? Why do you call it gay, and why is it? I didn't know lesbian. After a few years later, I went, okay, the women's are called lesbian. It's kind of hard because I come from, so I kind of never grew up with that, and just knowing everything, and it was different for me, and I wasn't exposed to a lot of these things. So learning and trying to meet people, and still I'm learning about it. So just want to know, how everything is stated, so you don't hurt anybody's feelings. I want to respect what they are. It's nothing wrong about it.
Right. And just like you didn't know, we have to be open to people that know. Let's hear somebody else's story about a time when you wanted to know, but you were a little uncomfortable.
I had a situation, I have a rainbow sticker in my office, and the daughter of a coworker had come in to visit, and she said, oh, I like your sticker. And even though I'm comfortable being bisexual, I wasn't sure if I wanted to connect with her. So are you gay? Are you bi? And even I wasn't sure. I'm like, oh, that's great. Why do you like it? It was just really awkward, but I wanted to connect. So it was kind of an awkward situation.
So what did you do?
We just kind of danced around it until we figured it out. But no one ever said the B word, It was we just kind of figured it out eventually. And she told me about on campus, she was part of a queer straight alliance. So, I kind of figured it out, but we weren't even comfortable telling each other.
Yeah.
It was like that when we started the ERG, and then we got a whole lot of people, and you just kind of want to know, well, why are you interested? And you can't ask those questions. questions, and we started with, why are you interested in this theory? What drew you to it? You know, that kind of thing. And eventually you start asking questions and getting to know people, but it's just not something you feel comfortable doing right away.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, it's sometimes if you ask a person, like being gay myself, that if you ask someone, are you gay, and they're not, you don't know how they're gonna accept
Yeah.
the
They
fact that
say
you
they're
asked
not.
them.
Right.
Why do you think I am? I mean, there's all these things. So you don't know whether you should say anything or not. So you kind of just dance around it like, you know, Leah did.
Do I look gay?
My answer to that is always like, does gay look a certain way?
Yeah, and we're gonna see also people losing a lot of the stereotypes that they have, because we're gonna be shopping, watching TV, doing whatever, same mistakes everybody else has. Another thing, here's what I think is really good too, about laws like same-sex marriage, more acceptance, because with any group, when you first start becoming into your own of who you are, and you say, well, we don't really see a lot of people who are like us, and so what ends up happening is like somebody will make like really crappy television show, or they'll write some really terrible poetry, or do some awful dance, but because they're from your group, you feel like you have to really appreciate it. Oh yeah, they're great, they're lesbians, oh, they're terrible. Because we have to do that. So now there's going to be, I think, we're also going to see a lot less tolerance of really poor performance. Any questions so far? Go ahead. Please feel free to ask anything.
Okay,
I mean it.
And this is actually for the group here, hopefully for someone in the Lgbta classification first, if anyone's comfortable enough sharing. But my question is, I've been here 19 years and I've seen all sorts of people come and go, and I've seen VSP change the way we do business around the space. So my question is for those who have been in the culture or how it was before and how it's evolved. I'd like to see what kind of changes they've noticed, what kind of things should we keep doing, what kind of gaps may there be?
That's an excellent question. You know, I do a lot of diversity work, and in fact, when I do longer programs, that's one of the questions. Say, what changes have you seen? What are the challenges? What do you think we need to do differently? I love that. Thank you. You know what? I think that's such a good question that I want to see some people raise their hand. And if you don't raise your hand, then we'll just break up into small groups to come up with some ideas. So is anybody going to raise their hand? Repeat the question.
I can speak
oh,
to this,
please.
having been here almost 17 years, and having been involved with the Diversity Awareness Committee and its evolution in Diversity Council. This is the first time in the history that I can remember in the organization that we're actually being recognized. So I'm a gay male, and I feel comfortable actually having that conversation with peers when they talk about family. And when I started here originally, I did not feel comfortable having that conversation. I really didn't feel comfortable at all talking about it. I skirted the issue. I would try to identify people like me, because of course, you know, we think we know, and so you try to identify those in the organization. And of course, though, there was an inter-network and we knew who we were. But I do see that those of us that have been here a long period of time that were part of that inter-network, there is more public recognition. I actually see behaviors in my peers that are different than they were 17 years ago, and they feel more comfortable in the organization being who they are. So yes, I definitely see a change. And that's from the leadership level down.
I think that let's hear from somebody else. What else you got?
Hey, Simma.
Please. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm Brett.
Oh, hi! I'm so sorry for ignoring you. I didn't even realize you were there. Do you feel invisible? Oh, good.
We've been following along, but I thought I would contribute to this question.
Please contribute.
You know, since I've worked at VSP, which I've been at VSP.
What's your name?
My name is Brett Warner.
Hi.
And I've been at VSP for 18 or 19 years, and I've been out the whole time I've been here. So it's been a different experience working at VSP, but previous to coming to VSP, I worked in some environments where it was not at all supportive. And really my entire life, I grew up watching my pronouns and being very careful and guarded about my personal life. And so you ask about what's changed over the years, and the world is dramatically different than the world that I grew up in. And in some ways, some of those old defense mechanisms are still there just beneath the surface, and I can't help but think that they are so hardwired into my personality that even though it's not necessary for me to be so guarded all the time, I still feel like sometimes I am. So I wonder what my personality would be like if I were growing up in today's world versus growing up when I did and having the experiences that I had.
That's an excellent question. And there's some factors in that too, which also depend on where you grew up today. Like if you were in Mississippi, the town where they wouldn't allow the gay bar, even though it would have meant that for this one particular town, it would have brought in a lot of money, you probably would still feel the same way. But if you were, go ahead.
Well, we had one openly gay person in the small town where I grew up, and he was murdered. So to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, that was my life.
Yeah.
So.
I think what you just brought up is really important too. That we also can't make assumptions that just because I think it's okay for me, that as a lesbian, that's going to be okay for you, so I have a right to bring you to tell everybody, oh, so and so is, because we still, we have that internal mindset. Remember when Moses freed the Jews from Egypt, wasn't it like they had to wander around for 40 years to be able to change the mentality? So it takes a while to change that mentality, and at the same time, you can't assume that just because there's laws, like I said earlier, things are better. I mean, I was working with an organization. It was a Fortune. I'll say I better not tell you it was a Fortune 10. I'll say Fortune 100, because then you might look it up. But they had one of the highest CEI rates. That was like one of the best rates of like all the great policies and procedures for LGBT people, and they won all these awards. So I was meeting with senior manager. We were talking about how our diversity training was going. And one of the senior managers said, we really want you to do some work. We want to educate the people about sexual orientation issues. So I said, okay. He said, I want you to do some case studies. Great idea. As I'm leaving, this woman, Mariella, comes up to me, and she says, I was in that meeting with you, and if you're going to be doing case studies, and I'm in your class, please do not ask me to do a case study. And my first thought was, oh, wow, is she homophobic? What's the deal? And so I said, why not? And she said, because I'm a lesbian, and I don't want to be out. Now, this is several years ago, when I was thinking, oh, you got domestic partnership, hey, everything's okay. And I said, really? But you have domestic partnerships. They no longer just say husband and wife is invited to the holiday party, which they got from Christmas to holiday. And you can say a guest. So what's the big deal? And she said, I'm working in the Midwest. I'm a regional vice president, she said, but I'm with people in manufacturing all the time. And just because it's cool at the corporate level, the information and the messages have not gotten down to the hourly employees who work in manufacturing, like in the factory, in the different plants. She said, and not only am I worried that they would no longer respect me and take my leadership, because all they would be seeing me as their stereotype, she said, I'd be worried about my physical safety. And that was a lesson to me that I can't make assumptions just because there's a certain policy or a certain vibe. That's not true for everybody else. So glad you said that. Anybody else? Anybody else have a question, comment, or want to share an experience? We'd love to have you. Or any suggestions you have for what VSP could do even better. Please.
For me, I was raised, in the early 60s and, 50s and stuff. So old baby boomer, parents who were relatively bigoted, I'd say, they tried, but I think it's really important to have these types of things because I grew up in that household, I'm sure I'm offending people and don't even know it.
Oh, yeah.
I try really hard not to, but that's part of why I'm here is, how can I be inclusive? So I think these types of forums and any other information that's out there, bring it on, 'cause I know I'm not the only baby boomer here that has, that background. So I unfortunately, it's changing things that you've been doing since you were a little kid, and phrases,
Oh, yeah. What's a phrase?
Well, the other day I was talking to somebody, another baby boomer, and out of my mouth came, no ticky, no laundry. And I go, oh my God.
We don't even think about these things. You see how, because it's programmed into our brain, so we need to become more conscious, and that's why these kinds of discussions are so helpful when you can feel safe. It has to be situations. We do a lot of cross-generational and sexual orientation dialogues where we have to create a space where people feel okay making a mistake, and where even they can see some of the humor in some of the things that they've said in the past. You think, oh, I can't believe I said that. I remember there was, this is like 20 years ago when I first started doing consulting, there was a woman who was a diversity consultant, and somebody says to me, well, Rosalind's getting married. So I said, oh, what's her husband do? And they said, oh no, she's marrying her partner, a woman. And for me, here I am, oh, lesbian, and I'm going, what's his name? So we all have these unconscious biases, and what's really important is that we're safe enough to tell somebody that they made a mistake, and they feel safe enough acknowledging the mistake without getting defensive. And when we create a feeling of safety, or when we let people know us, and it's a risk, it is a risk for people to know us, but look at the consequences of not taking that risk. And I can tell you, after my partner died, we had these neighbors that lived across the street from us. It was a family, and they watched out for everybody. They were older. The parents were like in their 80s, older. They were African American. They were very religious. I knew that one of them had at one point voted against same-sex marriage or Prop 8, whatever it was. But I remember after my partner died, the mother, who was in her 80s, who was very religious, came and sat with me. She was one of the first people to come and sit with me. And she said, oh, you've lost your soulmate. And then she said, I was shocked. She said, if gay marriage was legal, you could have gotten her Social Security. So, you really don't know. If we had more time, we would have more of a discussion, and I would like you to feel free to get my information. Send me any question, anything you want to tell me. I have some articles. If you give me your card, actually, I have some articles on how to be inclusive of LGBT people, how LGBT people need to be inclusive of everybody else. I would love to send it to you. And I can tell you one best practice that Lockheed did was, and Clark's does the same thing. They'll have ERGs do projects together. So what Lockheed did, which I was very impressed by, how many people know who Bayard Rustin was? Who was Bayard Rustin? Tell the group.
He was a black man that worked for Martin Luther King and key organizer in the March on Washington 50 years ago, but very closeted at that time.
Well, he was gay. He actually wasn't, and what I heard, he wasn't even that closeted. He's more out than some other people were. I was surprised. But closeted by today's standards. He was the architect of the March on Washington. And he was a gay man, and he had to deal with a lot of homophobia, like with people like trying to exclude him because he was gay. But so what Lockheed did was they had the LGBT ERG and the African American ERG do a program together, and they did it on the life of Bayard Rustin. So those are the things that people can do. And I just want to close that say and let you know that we have a ways to go, and I am optimistic, and I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for this country and for this world in terms of creating more inclusion. And I'm very hopeful just to see how in a short time we've got 15 states And more states, it's like a domino, more states are going down. And I was thinking about this, somebody said, well, what do you think Sandy would say? I said, I think she'd be looking down on us, she'd be very proud, she'd be smiling, and she would say, carry on. Thank you.